In this lesson, we're going to look at identifying the basic features of a parabola from a graph. So what are our big ideas? First of all quadratic functions have a graph that is a parabola. So whenever you see a parabola on a graph, you know that it was a quadratic function that generated it. Parabolas have basic features: a vertex, which is a turnaround point, the axis of symmetry, and an opening direction. They open upwards or downwards. All parabolas cross the y-axis once, and therefore all parabolas are going to have a y-intercept. However, not all parabolas will cross the x-axis. Therefore, some parabolas will have x-intercepts and some will not. We're going to concentrate just on identifying the three basic features: the vertex, the axis of symmetry, and the opening direction from the graph itself. Here's a graph of the very basic quadratic function f of x is equal to x squared. So you can't get any simpler than that. So let's look at these three features on the parent graph. First of all, we have a vertex, which is where that curve turns around. And for our parent quadratic function, f of x is equal to x squared, our vertex is at 0, 0. The axis of symmetry is a line, and it's the line that splits your parabola in half vertically. So parabolas are symmetric around that line. And for this particular parabola, the axis of symmetry is x is equal to 0. And I want to warn you, the axis of symmetry is always an equation of a line. It's not a single point. It's the line that splits that parabola in half vertically. And finally, we have an opening direction, and you can just see visually that this parabola opens upwards. Let's look at a variation on the parent. We're going to translate the parent. G of x is equal to x minus 1, that quantity squared. So we have a shift to the right, so a horizontal shift to the right of 1. And so what changes then about our basic features? Well, we've just shifted our vertex over by 1, so our vertex is at 1, 0. The axis of symmetry, the line that splits our parabola in half vertically, is x is equal to 1. And you can see that the parabola opens upwards. Let's look at another example. G of x is equal to negative x squared. Remember from our work with translations and transformations, having a negative coefficient in front of the x squared term means we're going to reflect. So we're flipping that parabola across the x-axis, so now it's facing downwards. However, we have not shifted that parabola left or right or up or down, so its vertex is at 0, 0, just like the parent's. The axis of symmetry is the y-axis, that's x is equal to 0, and now we can see that the parabola opens downwards. Here's an example where we have a vertical shift. X squared plus 3 means that we're going to shift our parabola upwards by 3 units. So what does this do to our vertex? Well, our vertex is also moved up. We haven't moved left or right. So our vertex is at 0, 3. Our axis of symmetry is still the y-axis. X is equal to 0. And the parabola opens upwards. Here's another example, and now we have a number of translations. We have a vertical shift, we have a horizontal shift, and we have a reflection. So what's happened to our vertex? Well, our vertex has shifted 1 to the right and 3 up. So now our new vertex is at 1, 3. Our axis of symmetry, that's the line splitting our parabola in half vertically, is x is equal to 1. And you can see that our vertex faces down. So it's pretty easy to identify these three basic features from the graph of a parabola. So all quadratic functions do have a graph that is a parabola. Parabolas have these basic features: the vertex, the axis of symmetry, and the opening direction, and those are the features that we were just talking about. All parabolas do cross the y-axis once, and therefore have a y-intercept. Not all parabolas cross the x-axis, therefore some don't have an x-intercept, and finding the x and y-intercepts is in another lesson. And we can identify these features of a parabola from a graph, or in another lesson you'll see that we can also identify them from the function itself.